My name is Daniel Harper. I'm 71 years old. 3 months ago, my life quietly changed with a phone call from my doctor. It wasn't dramatic, no alarms, no rush, just a calm voice explaining test results and what they might mean. I remember sitting there afterward, staring at nothing in particular, thinking, so this is the moment everything starts to look different. What surprised me wasn't fear. It wasn't anger either. It was clarity. A strange, heavy awareness that time, something I'd always treated as flexible, was suddenly very real, very limited. I didn't tell many people at first. I went through the motions, made appointments, nodded during explanations. But inside, something had already shifted. I began looking back at my life, not with judgment, but with honesty. For the first time in years. A week later, the words finally became clear. Stage 3 cancer. The doctor explained treatment options, timelines, probabilities. I listened, nodded, asked the right questions. From the outside, I probably looked calm, responsible. But the truth is, the first few days passed in a blur. I told my family, I scheduled tests. I read articles late into the night. Everything felt mechanical, like I was following instructions written for someone else. Survival mode takes over quickly when you're given news like that. It wasn't until the second week that it truly settled in. One morning, I woke up before my wife, watched her breathe in her sleep, and felt something break open inside me. Not fear of dying, but the sudden realization that I had never truly stopped to examine the life I was living. In that quiet moment, I wasn't thinking about hospitals or treatments. I was thinking about time, about how easily it had slipped past me while I was busy doing what I thought I was supposed to do. My life suddenly looked like a long road with familiar turns, some chosen carefully, others taken out of habit. And for the first time, I could see where those turns had slowly led me away from myself. I realized my biggest fear wasn't dying. It was the thought of leaving without ever fully living on my own terms, without fixing what I had postponed for years, without saying yes to things I kept delaying because they didn't feel urgent at the time. If any of this feels familiar to you, leave a comment with the number 6. Sometimes recognizing it is the hardest part. For most of my adult life, I took the safe road. I spent 38 years working as an accountant. I was dependable. I showed up on time. I provided for my family and did what was expected of me. From the outside, it looked like a successful, responsible life, and in many ways it was. But if I'm being honest, that path was never chosen from passion. It was chosen from practicality. The steady paycheck mattered more than how I felt when I woke up each morning. Over time, I learned how to perform the role well, even as the part of me that wanted something different slowly went quiet. I didn't question it then. I told myself this was just what grown men did. When I was younger, long before spreadsheets and office walls became my world, I wanted something very different. I wanted to work with my hands. I loved wood, the weight of it, the smell, the patience it required. My grandfather taught me when I was a boy, showing me how to measure twice, cut once, and take pride in what you build slowly. But woodworking wasn't practical. It didn't promise stability. So I treated it like a phase, something to outgrow. I chose a career that made sense on paper, even though it never quite fit who I was inside. Over the years, that dream didn't disappear. It just got quieter. It waited while I stayed busy being responsible. And without realizing it, I slowly set aside a part of myself I thought I could return to someday, when life finally slowed down. It took a diagnosis to make something painfully clear to me. There's a difference between making a living and actually living a life. For years, I told myself I was doing the right thing, providing, planning, preparing for the future, and I was. But somewhere along the way, those responsibilities became my entire identity. I wasn't unhappy enough to leave, but I wasn't fulfilled enough to feel alive either. I stayed busy, productive, and tired. That felt normal. Looking back now, I realize how easy it is to confuse motion with meaning, to fill your days with tasks and obligations while quietly postponing the things that make you feel like yourself. I didn't lose my dreams all at once. I simply kept putting them off, convinced there would always be time later. So I did something I hadn't done in decades. I went down to the garage and started clearing it out. Boxes I hadn't opened in years, tools covered in dust. I set up a small workspace and began working with wood again, slowly, carefully. This was happening while I was still in treatment. Some days the fatigue was heavy. Some days I could barely manage an hour. But on the days I could, something shifted. I felt present, focused, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't about productivity or results. It was about reconnecting with a part of myself I had ignored for too long. If you've ever felt more alive doing something small and honest than doing what looks successful from the outside, leave a comment and tell me why. As I spent more time in the garage, memories began surfacing on their own. Not the big moments, but the quiet ones I had brushed aside. Dinners I skipped because I was tired. Weekends I postponed because work felt more urgent. The times my kids asked me to play or talk, and I answered later, without realizing how often later never came. None of those choices felt wrong at the time. They felt reasonable, responsible. But looking back now, I see how those small refusals slowly added up. Not into anger or conflict, but into distance. I didn't lose my family's love, but I missed chances to be fully present in moments that never repeated themselves. Those are the regrets that stay quiet, but last the longest. A few weeks later, my son came by to check on me. We stood together in the garage, and I showed him how to hold a chisel properly, how to let the tool do the work instead of forcing it. He watched closely for a moment, then smiled and said something that caught me completely off guard. He said he never knew I could do this, that he wished I had taught him when he was younger. I laughed it off at first, but later that night, his words stayed with me. Not because he blamed me, he didn't, but because he was right. I had been there, yet absent. I had skills, time, and moments I never shared, always assuming there would be another chance. That realization hurt more than any treatment ever could. That's why I'm sharing this now. Not because I have all the answers, and not to make anyone feel afraid. I'm sharing it because waiting nearly cost me the chance to live honestly. You don't need a diagnosis or a crisis to start paying attention to your own life. You don't need permission to care about what makes you feel whole. If there's something you've been postponing, conversations, time with family, a part of yourself you set aside, start there. Start today. Small steps still count. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more stories like this. Sometimes One shared truth is enough to change a direction.